The Flames power play is the last duck that refuses to get in the row.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and today I am joined by my partner in crime, Nick Zararis. Nick, how are you?
I'm good. I'm happy that I stayed up and the Flames won. So whenever you have to stay up on the East Coast, you want the team you're rooting for to win. So I'm very glad the Flames won last night.
Yes, it was a great outcome, and I'm sure we will touch upon some high points of that game against the Kraken. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We're going to talk about the Flames power play and how it's changed, evolved, but evolved feels like progress has been made. That sounds...
How it's regressed, how it got held, it's being held back, whatever word you want to use it. Like if you could send a Pokemon back in the other direction, like a Blastoise back to a Squirtle.
Yeah, and we're going to cover all that on today's episode of Locked On Flames. So make sure you're subscribed to wherever you're getting your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube as well. I was sitting in the break room at lunch today. Actually, let's rewind even further. I was sitting in bed, comfortable as all hell, under my heated blanket with my fuzzy socks and Jonathan Huberdeau. It makes it even better by scoring on the power play. That felt like a Christmas miracle.
Hey, man, it's that time of year where you start rooting for the miracles to come together.
Yeah, no, it was... I don't understand. Well, no, I do, because it's Flames hockey. And they don't have that elite skill set anymore. Marc Savard was supposed to fix this. Is he, with what he's been given to work with?
All right, so we'll talk about this a few different ways. We can talk about the raw numbers, which is where we'll start. We'll talk about some of the stuff that teams can do but don't really do. I'll touch on a few things, power play structures that don't really exist anymore. And then we'll talk about what teams with similar skill profiles to the Flames do. So I'm going to switch over to my notes here real quick because it's all on one screen for me today. So the big issue, and we've discussed this a lot in regards to the Flames power play, they don't have a conventional trigger man. When you think of the NHL today, what makes a successful power play? You've got one guy who's got a wicked shot. You've got the Zibanejad, the Ovechkin. You've got most teams, when they have an elite power play, that is their driving force, their central, what their power play is designed to do. For the most part, when a power play is working correctly, successfully, they're moving both the puck and their feet. When a power play goes stagnant, it's only one or the other. You'll notice that a lot when teams are struggling on the power play. Guys aren't moving their feet. They're just passing the puck around back and forth. And that's kind of limiting the opportunities of what you can do. So conceptually, you do have limitations. You can only do what you have in terms of players and personnel. So I'm switching back over here. The big issue, and this is just power play stats, but their best shooters all season at 5-on-5 are Zary, Mangiapane, Dylan Dube, and Adam Ruzicka. That tells me that's your telltale number one. Hey, we don't exactly have shooting talent on this team. No. Granted, it's very early in the season, and those guys are going to be taking higher quality shots because none of them are shooters. They're going to be closer to the net. Like, we're talking about guys who convert very low amounts of shots, who are, 1 in every 4, 1 in every 5. That's because they're not shooting a whole lot. That's why the numbers shake out that way.
Oh, God. That is not what I think any of us deem acceptable or successful. And, I mean, we've talked about this for, I feel like, ad nauseum for the last 2 years. You can only work with what you have.
Yeah.
And now is a really good time for them to address these issues, because it looks like they're going to be trading people away. and it's time to make some adjustments, and people can get mad at the comments all they want about how the Flames are good and they don't need to rebuild or retool. Okay.
You're going to laugh when I tell you who's got the best shooting percentage of anyone on the team on the power play.
I guarantee it. Who is it?
It's Greer. 1 of 1.
What?
100%. He has one shot on the power play all year and it went in. 100%.
That's crazy. Congratulations to Craig Conroy for winning the waiver wire cup.
Greer 1 out of 1, Dubé 1 out of 3, and then Uyghur and Mangiapane each 1 out of 5 on power play attempts. So, those numbers will come down as we get into, the season develops, more opportunities, but teams and at the team level, the stats are about, what you would expect here. So where is it? I wrote it. So last year, the Flames were 12% shooters on the power play as a team. This year, they are, last year it was 12%, and that included Tyler Toffoli, who shot 18% on the power play. This year, so far, they are shooting 10% on the power play. 12% was 27th in the league last year. 10% right now that they're at is 24th. I imagine if they stay at that number, it will go down as the season develops, just as we have more data. Obviously, we're only a month and a half into the season, so these numbers are going to sound a little wonky, especially in regards to percentages, because when you only shoot, 7 times and 2 go in, what do you mean the guy has a 30% shot from the field? He doesn't. Well, right now he does. We all know that a lot of these numbers aren't going to hold, but for right now, this is what we're working with.
Yeah, and that's another big thing to take into consideration is the sample size. But, it's good to iron things out and fix them before they're too far gone, and just taking a look at this, because there are times where I want the Flames to just decline the power play. No, we're good. We'll you can have the man advantage if you want.
So, to tie this all together before we move on to some more conceptual things, the question you would typically ask then is, are they creating volume, quality, or are they having finishing issues? So, in terms of rate, they're 24th. In terms of the goals they've scored per 60, they're 26th. The expected goals for, they're 19th. The high danger chances for, they're 16th. So that tells you they're underperforming their shooting percentage. Their shooting percentage is underperforming what you would expect. But we also have to remember that the Flames don't really have a ton of shooting talent to kind of compensate for that. And we also run into the same issue on the power play as we do at 5-on-5, where because the Flames produce at a reasonably high volume, they can kind of cheese the numbers and make it look like they're generating a lot more offense than they actually are, just because of the sheer volume, where those low quality chances, they are not particularly dangerous, but if you have a bunch of them, they add up. So the fact that they're close to middle of the pack and high danger, that bodes well. That means they're getting the puck where they need it to, because they don't have the shooting talent. But as we're going to talk about in a minute here, there's only so much you can do based on the talent you have.
Yeah. And, if you're ever looking at a Flames graphic or an NHL graphic and you're just trying to find the Flames on the chart, just go towards the middle of the page. You'll find them. It's worked every time so far this season for me. But coming up next, we are going to talk about some possible solutions. So start screen recording so you can send this to the Flames coaching staff, because I'm sure these are great ideas. But first, we are going to talk about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets to all of your sporting, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Nick, are you doing any hockey sports attending anytime soon?
I'm supposed to go to the Ranger game next Monday, so that'll be fun.
Well, I hope you use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your tickets at Game Time. With Game Time, they offer last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and you even get to see the view from your seat. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute ticket, lowest prices guaranteed. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. We're here for you 5 days a week and breaking stuff down with some fun graphics and just analyzing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one good thing. Like, part of the reason I justified buying an iPad was being able to do things like this. Like,
Yeah.
I really had I really didn't need an iPad, but I justified it by saying I could use it for work things. And that's what we're going to pull up. So I'm going to see if this works properly. Let's see. Okay, cool. So you'll see here on this diagram over here on my other monitor. So if you're watching on YouTube and you see me glancing over to the right, that's where the diagram is. So I can explain and, input delay versus monitor. What? Enough. Okay. So this is your baseline power play configuration in today's NHL. Most teams run a 1-3-1, meaning one defenseman up high, three guys across the middle, and then one guy at the net front. This is really good for opening up the penalty kill through the middle of the ice. You see teams with a lot of high-end talent, the Islanders, blasphemy, the Oilers, the Rangers, once upon a time, the Flames. You see Columbus do this when they're not healthy, scratching their good players, where the main point of this power play configuration is to move the puck laterally. So you're getting the goalie to move side to side. You're getting the penalty killers to move side to side. And that has the trickle-down effect of manipulating the defense. When you have the power play, the whole point is you have a numbers advantage. I know that sounds redundant to state, but too many teams don't move enough when they're on the power play, and they're not taking advantage of the opportunity before them because they're falling into bad habits. So when you run this 1-3-1, you are typically your main play is going lateral here. Whichever of this player or this player is your better shooter, that is the person who's typically going to be getting set up for that big one-timer. If that's not there, the alternative, this guy here in the middle is going to try and drag the penalty killers out from the net front, because typically the defending team is going to have two guys on the net mouth to play the one guy who's trying to screen the goalie and to play for rebounds and deflections. So the alternative, if you don't have that cross seam pass, is the shot from the point, where you're looking for the deflection or the rebound, where this guy at the net front can either stick his stick out like Pavelski does, Chris Kreider, Anders Lee, or you have the alternative where if they don't get a stick on it and it hits the goalie, they have the opportunity of these guys crashing down and this guy recovering the puck. And that's where you get into your scramble drill, where at that point, it's rugby rules down in the net mouth, where guys are going to start flopping everywhere and sticks are going to get banged into the ice. And hopefully your team, if you're on the power play, is going to be able to find that loose puck. That is what most teams run in today's NHL, is the 1-3-1.
That's not even something that I could explain. So thank you for doing that, because I appreciate the visual graphics.
Hey, when we're talking about formations and stuff, the easiest way is to just show you the X's and O's, because this is explainable. The average person can understand this when they look at it like this. So next up here, this is what a lot of teams ran when I first started watching hockey when I was a little bit younger. This is a 3-2. You remember back in the day when it was kind of weird? Like, I remember when I first started watching hockey when I, about 10, 15 years ago, where power plays had two defensemen back then when I was younger. So this is something we don't really see a lot of in today's NHL, because you would rather have the fourth forward and you would rather have the opportunity for that lateral play, that cross seam play, because it's a little more high end and the players today are a little bit better than they were, say, the 5-10 years ago, where we saw configurations like this. Unless you really don't have a second guy. I know some teams on their second unit will do this, the 3-2, where it'll be more of a 1-3-1, but with two defensemen. But for all intents and purposes, I just wanted to show this as a potential alternative for the Flames, the 3-2, where you're going to basically have the guys at the point taking pot shots, looking for rebounds and deflections. And it's going to put a lot of work on these guys down low at the net mouth. But when you have the types of talent the Flames do, the forwards they do, this is something that you could conceivably work on, where you're encouraging your high motor guys to win puck battles, which I know if you're on the Flames and you're Andrew Mangiapane or Dylan Dubé listening to me say that, you say, I work hard enough at 5-on-5. Can I not be a fancy hockey player in today's NHL? Can we not make SportsCenter's top 10? I'm just saying, man, sometimes if you can't score from out here, and you are good at getting the puck to this area because you're physical, because you play with a high motor, this is something you could conceivably do. And then real quick, the last one here. This is something a few teams do, a 3-1-1, where it's basically moving down these guys to down here. But you would do this version of this if your trigger man is typically your defenseman, somebody who's going to miss the net a little bit more, be a lower percentage guy. This is something the Flames could conceivably look into, because I know that Rasmus Andersson does shoot a decent amount for them on the power play. So because he's not as good of a shooter as some of the more potent power play guys, doing this, you have the opportunity of these three guys down low being there for the rebounds and the deflections. That's the main idea of the other two configurations. And the reason I'm suggesting this for the Flames, and we'll go back to our main look here, the reason I'm suggesting alternative configurations, and I know a lot of teams are not going to run a 3-2 or they're not going to run the 3-1-1 in today's NHL, because when you know what other teams are doing, when pretty much everybody runs a version of that 1-3-1, you're going to feel dumb if you're being outside the orthodoxy. You're going to say, well, those other teams are doing it. It works for them. We aren't we trying this? And I understand that idea. And largely this is just me spitballing ideas because the Flames struggle to score. So we can't keep doing what we're doing. That's the recurring theme of the Flames so far this season, and Locked On Flames here is they can't keep doing what they're doing or we're all going to go insane. Right. These are possible alternatives that they might not necessarily work, but you won't know until you try.
Yeah. And it's really, again, just another variation of you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you just need to try it. I don't think anyone is going to, I don't see why you wouldn't be open-minded when this is the situation you're in and you're struggling so bad. Like, wouldn't you consider changing? I mean, you can't change your environment, but your play, your structure, your format, something to, the Flames put Huberdeau on the third line and he started getting going. So a positive change, something that, oh no, $10.5 million can't play on the third line. Well, you know what? It's working. And not a long-term solution, hopefully, but just do something wacky. Be different.
At the very least, exactly. At the very least, you tried. It's better to go out swinging and say you tried your best than failing with what's comfortable, at least in my opinion. I understand why people in sports don't do that, because they feel the need to always be able to justify and rationalize their decisions, because they're always thinking about the next job, because they have to live in that constant fear of what happens if they get fired. So I do understand that. I empathize with that mindset. I'm just saying it's frustrating as somebody who consumes it.
Right. And it's not like you're just watching one team. You consume a lot of different hockey games and a lot of different talent. And it's okay to, I don't know, I probably can't give a pep talk to NHLers, but I don't know, dare to be different, live, laugh, love, try a new power play setup, do something.
Try a new power play setup, tinker with the power play setup you're actively running, change what your primary, secondary looks are. There are solutions within what you're doing already. It doesn't have to be as radical as changing your entire configuration.
Before we move on, do you think that Matthew Coronado will see, he'll see more time at the NHL level this year, I think, but do you think he'll see more time on the power play?
It can't hurt. That's his best trait, is his shooting talent. I can't tell you he's got an amazing elite one-timer. Watched a handful of NHL games and watched his college highlight tape. So I wasn't in the trenches scouting Matt Coronado at Harvard, but he's got a good shot. So at the very least, it's something worth considering whenever he does come back to the NHL level.
So there we go. We are going to leave the Flames behind and talk about success and how successful teams run a good power play and the opposite of where the Flames are at. skill level wise too, I'm sure. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy and keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to its peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available for U.S. customers. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed, but also following us on Twitter, X, whatever, at Jess Belmosto and at Nick Zararis. If any of you hear my cat crying, it's because he's watching Flames highlights. I'm just kidding. Live, laugh, love the Flames. The Rangers have a good power play.
Yes, I think they're first in the entire league in power play, and it's very early. Nobody's going to have a 30% power play, but the bones of a good power play are there. They run the conventional 1-3-1. They've got Zibanejad and Panarin on the circles. They've got Carter at the net mouth. They've got Trocheck in the middle, and when he's healthy, Adam Fox. But right now, it's been Eric Gustafsson, and they've largely been fine. And they manipulate the cross-seam pass very well at an extremely high level. And Zibanejad only has, Zibanejad doesn't have a goal at 5-on-5 yet this year. He has one in 3-on-3 overtime, and he has a couple power play tucks. But even when their power play is not going, the difference for them this year, and especially because 2 years ago they had the second best power play in the league. Last year was like 6 or 7. The big difference between this year and last year is why it's been a little bit better is just they're getting the deflections. And this is something we talk about a lot when it comes to that type of play: deflections, rebounds, second chance scoring opportunities. Those are hard to translate repeatedly over and over and over again because you just never know how the puck's going to bounce.
Yeah, and it's very similar to everything else with the Flames. It's kind of all about luck. And, you can't really bet on that. Go to FanDuel.com today. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off or something. You can bet on luck that way. But not when you are trying to actually win games when you're on the ice. And I feel like the Flames are just... you said the Rangers have strong bones of, good power play. The Flames are flubber. They're not there.
The one thing I will say in regards to the Flames power play, it feels like it's always very frantic when it's on the ice.
Yes.
It always feels like, oh no, we're running out of time. We got to get a look. We got to get a look. We got to get a look. And they're just forcing pucks from everywhere instead of trying to fall back on their rules and their structure. That's all rules and structure. That's all structure and scheme is okay. If this happens, I need to do this. If that happens, I need to do that. That's all these things are. They just give you rules to keep in your head to fall back on so everybody else knows what you're doing. That's what's frustrating when you see a team that consistently plays frantic and a bit, out of whack and stressed out. That's kind of that's the issue at hand for the Flames, in my opinion, as far as the eye test. The rate stats, I told you, they're very middle of the pack or below middle of the pack in most of them. So let's focus on what we can change. Let's be a little more deliberate and direct and moving our feet and rotating where we are on the ice, which is an element of all of those configurations I failed to mention. It's not just moving the puck laterally side to side. It's person on the circles moving up to the point, person on the point skating down low. You've got to be manipulating the defense at all times to try and get the favorable matchup, get the better look you want. The Flames don't do a great job of that because the defense doesn't really respect any of their shooters. The defense wants wants the Flames to shoot from the top of the circles or from the point because that's not a particularly dangerous shot, especially if the goalie can see it. If the goalie can see it coming from 40 feet away, they're not particularly worried about that. But real quick, because you brought it up and we can talk about it in regards to the game last night. They should be trying to run the power play through Huberdeau. Huberdeau's best skill set is his facilitating, his playmaking. He's not great with the puck skating, trying to manipulate it to create space. His
No.
best trait is his hockey IQ, is knowing where other people are and manipulating based on that. He's not going to beat you with his hands. He's not going to beat you with his feet. He's going to outsmart you, which means he's going to need guys who are capable of getting the puck and doing stuff with it. That's why, at least abstractly, I understand playing him with guys like Backlund and Mangiapane and Coleman and Dubé. Is those guys will go and get the puck. If Huberdeau shoots and misses, or if there's a scramble around the net mouth, at the very least, you can use those guys to manipulate the defense for Huberdeau, which gives him something. For whatever reason, he has failed to get comfortable. He has failed to find chemistry with anybody in the top six. So you got to maximize what he is working. He can still manipulate the defense with his mind. He can still do things from a playmaking perspective. Try things out with him trying to orchestrate the power play as opposed to what they're doing right now, which kind of just feels chaotic.
Yeah, it feels like they're running around in the kitchen's on fire. And they're just, it's a grease fire and they're dumping water. It's not like, it's just getting worse. And, they're very thankful when they're off the power play and back at even strength, which is such an odd way to, I guess, look at things because, you would think, okay, like a little more comfortable on the ice where, they're shorthanded. We have shooters, if you want to call them that, but like to take advantage of it, and they don't. And it's so frustrating because every time, like I know that Rasmus Andersson is going to shoot the puck, and hopefully it goes somewhere near the net. And everyone else knows too.
That has been an issue, is that they are very predictable what they do on the power play. And that's part of what makes it so frantic is the defense doesn't get manipulated. It doesn't move. So they just pass the puck around the perimeter. And then there's 40 seconds left. And it's, we've only had 2 looks in the minute and a half we've been out here. All right, let's just start throwing it at the net and hope something happens.
Yeah. And they do it at 5-on-5 too, but like, again, you're not really on a time crunch there. You've got a good amount of time if you whatever. But like they need to just start trying something new.
Yes.
Shake it up. Variety is nice. I want to see them implement, like you said, having Huberdeau kind of quarterback the power play. And I know that it's kind of been through Rasmus Andersson for the last few years. And I mean, I trust Marc Savard more than Kirk Mueller. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see.
It's just an idea. Again, at the very maximize what is working. If that means having Huberdeau run the second power play, I understand teams don't like having a forward working the point because they're not as good at back skating. And if you get the rush going the other way, you're liable defensively. The Flames are already kind of in a boat where they need to be conceding defense to generate offense because they don't generate enough offense. That's a calculated risk you have to be. I'm not going to say they have to be willing to take because it's not my job, but it's a calculated risk that they could take.
Right. And I mean, if it's calculated, you can kind of, rein it back in and have a little bit of control over it potentially. But I mean, it's just so frustrating because we finally thought that things were going to be resolved. There would be some actual life to the power play. And here we are. So maybe it's not the coach.
No, it's definitely not only the coach. Nothing is ever just the coach or the players at the front office. It's all interconnected.
Yes. And I think that about does it for today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all for hanging out with us as we talk about the Flames power play. And we're here for you 5 days a week. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube as well. You can follow us on Twitter, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, I don't know, every social media platform that exists, MySpace, at Jess Belmosto and at Nick Zararis. Nick, do you have any parting words for our wonderful Flames fans?
There's no hockey on tonight. Go do something productive.
Never.